Okay, let's get into this. We're looking at a really striking moment today. It's all centered on this courtroom scene.
Right, and it kicks off immediately with the judge giving a pretty serious warning.
Yeah, that sets the tone straight away. You know something significant is about to happen.
Absolutely. It creates this immediate sense of gravity, and then the source mentions the whole courtroom just goes silent.
That silence really hangs there, even before the main player arrives.
Exactly. It underlines the weight of whatever's coming.
So then this figure, Mark Halperin, walks in. The description is specific. Navy blue suit, and importantly, an FBI badge under the lapel.
Yeah, the badge is key, isn't it? Even if he's a former agent, that badge signals his background, his authority, his history.
And he's carrying a black briefcase, which, you know, in a scene like this.
It just screams evidence or important documents, doesn't it? Adds a whole layer of visual intrigue, very deliberate staging, it feels like.
He sits down, doesn't look at anyone according to the source, and then delivers this bombshell.
Yeah, get right to it. What does he say?
He says, and I'm quoting loosely here, "I've been tracking Mr. Combs and his organization for over 20 years. This isn't new."
Wow. Okay. 20 years.
20 years. And then he adds, "What's new is that we're finally able to talk about it."
That last part. Finally able to talk about it. That's almost as significant as the 20 years bit.
I think so too. It implies there were reasons it couldn't be discussed before. Obstacles. Something.
Right. Legal constraints, lack of actionable evidence until now. Something has definitely shifted to allow this public statement.
And the reaction described. Just silence. Utter silence in the room after he says that.
You can picture it. Everyone just processing 20 years of FBI tracking and this vague but loaded term, his organization.
Exactly. What does organization encompass? How deep does this go? That's a huge question mark.
And the fact he says this isn't new, it makes you wonder, like, who knew? Was this an open secret in some circles, just not public?
It certainly reframes the whole situation, doesn't it? This is not just about current events, potentially. It's about something long-running.
A sustained, decades-long focus from the FBI. I mean, the resources involved alone suggest this was considered incredibly serious.
It wasn't just a passing glance, clearly. This suggests a deep, persistent investigation.
So, pulling back a bit, the main takeaway is this claim from a former FBI agent. A 20-year investigation into Combs and Associates now coming out.
Yeah, that's the core revelation, the sheer length of time and the fact it's now deemed okay to discuss openly. It's a lot to take in.
It really sets a dramatic stage for whatever might follow. The initial shock value is immense.
It does make you think, though. What kind of alleged activity warrants 2 decades of FBI attention? What could have been the trigger all those years ago?
And that briefcase he walked in with, it's just sitting there, like Chekhov's gun. What information could possibly be inside it?
So, a final thought for you listening. What kind of circumstances do you think could finally unlock the ability to talk about a secret, decades-long investigation like this one?
And maybe just as intriguing, what kind of secrets do you imagine might be held within that black briefcase Halperin brought to the stand? Makes you wonder. You ever hear something that just, clicks and suddenly shifts how you see a whole situation? That's kind of what we're diving into today. It's about this testimony from a former FBI agent regarding Sean Combs.
Right.
We're looking at excerpts from a report called Former FBI Agent Testifies Against Combs. And really, our mission here is just to unpack what this agent initially revealed. These first claims are, well, pretty startling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a former FBI agent testifying publicly, alleging this kind of long-term investigation into someone so well-known. It just immediately makes you ask, what's been happening behind closed doors all this time?
Okay, so let's picture the scene from the report. It's a courtroom, right? Very serious vibe. And in walks Mark Halperin, former FBI. The description is quite detailed. Navy suit, his FBI badge showing, black briefcase.
Yeah.
Comes across as very silent, very focused. It really sets a tone.
Absolutely. That whole image, it feels deliberate, like he's there to really emphasize how serious this is. This isn't just gossip, It's a formal statement from law enforcement.
And then, boom, his opening statement. The report calls it a real shocker. I've been tracking Mr. Combs and his organization for over 20 years. This isn't new. What's new is that we're finally able to talk about it.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently just silence in the room. 20 years. That is an incredibly long time to be allegedly investigating someone.
It really puts the current situation in a totally different light, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you think this might just be the tip of the iceberg that's been forming for decades.
Right. It's just this sustained kind of covert operation.
Yeah.
So here's where it gets really deep. Halperin claimed the FBI started looking into Combs way back, late 1990s.
Late 90s.
That's the claim. And he pointed to alleged signs even back then. Things like unusual financial records, private parties that were supposedly linked to illegal stuff,
Okay.
and these foreign accounts, connected to what he called fake companies, shell corporations, basically.
Right. Shell corporations, weird money movements, dodgy parties. Those are often, the kinds of red flags investigators look for, especially with potential financial crime or organized illegal activity.
But it wasn't smooth sailing, according to this report. Halperin claimed they kept running into walls, powerful people blocking the investigation, obstruction.
He even gave a specific example. 2001, they apparently had evidence linking Combs to money laundering overseas, requested a warrant, denied. The warrant request was denied. That was almost, nearly 25 years ago now?
That alleged denial in 2001, that feels, well, significant, like a turning point. It raises questions, right? Who could deny an FBI warrant request like that, and why?
Exactly. And this alleged pattern of obstruction, it seems to have led Halperin to a pretty big conclusion.
Which was?
The report says he realized it wasn't just sort of protecting a celebrity. He apparently came to believe it involved high-level government interference.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge claim, government interference.
It is a really explosive accusation. Yeah. If any of that is true, it really highlights the challenges, doesn't it? Investigating people with that much power, that much influence, and the potential for, outside forces messing with the course of justice.
So let's just recap the core takeaway here.
Yeah.
We have a former FBI agent alleging a decades-long investigation into Sean Combs.
Starting in the 90s.
Characterized by these early alleged warning signs.
Financial stuff, the parties, offshore accounts.
And then claims of serious obstruction, possibly even reaching up to government interference.
Yeah. It really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? For you listening.
Yeah.
If these claims check out the long investigation, the high-level obstruction, what does that really say about how justice works or doesn't work when powerful figures are involved?
Right. What are the bigger implications for accountability and, the rule of law itself?
Exactly. Lots to think about there, about the dynamics in these really high-stakes situations.
Definitely makes you consider all the layers involved. Thanks for digging into this initial bombshell testimony with us today. It feels like we're just constantly trying to wrangle information these days. Articles pile up, documents just sit there unread. That YouTube video you bookmarked.
Oh, absolutely. It's the modern challenge, isn't it? The sheer volume is, immense. And just keeping track, let alone actually using it effectively, sometimes feels like you're just treading water.
Totally. Which is why when we saw the source you shared for this deep dive, this video about a new tool from Google, we thought, okay, we have to jump in here.
Right.
It really promises to fundamentally change how you interact with your sources, moving beyond just, saving them.
To actually conversing with them. Yeah.
Exactly. So our mission today, based on the video deep dive, is to really unpack this tool. It's called Notebook LM.
What is it? How does it actually work? And maybe most importantly, why could it be such a game changer if you're dealing with, a lot of information? Doesn't matter what field you're in.
And seriously, stick around because there's one feature in particular that sounds almost like science fiction. Taking your source material and turning it into, an actual conversation. It's wild.
So first things first, what's immediately clear from the video is that this isn't just, Google Keep with a new coat of paint or something.
No, definitely not.
This is something distinct, built from the ground up, really, for deep engagement with text and other materials.
Right. It's called Notebook LM. And it's not brand spanking new, actually.
Right.
The video mentioned it started life back in July 2023 as a research project inside Google.
Yeah, that's right. And it's still technically considered experimental. Currently, it's web only, which is how the video explores it. But that research origin is key, I think.
How so?
Well, its initial goal was pretty ambitious, letting you essentially talk to your documents.
Okay, like a chat bot?
Sorta, yeah, but a chatbot that only knows what's inside the sources you give it. It's not supposed to make things up or pull random stuff from the wider internet.
Ah, so it's grounded, strictly based on your material. That's important.
Very. And Google has also made a point of saying, apparently, that the data you upload your documents, your notes, isn't used to train their big general AI models.
That's a big relief for privacy concerns, for sure.
Definitely a factor.
Okay, so you've got this concept, chatting with your documents. How does that actually, play out in the tool itself? The interface looked pretty simple in the video, sort of like a chat window.
Exactly. It's designed to feel familiar. You start by adding your source materials.
Yeah.
And the flexibility here, well, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. What kind of stuff can you put in?
The video showed Google Docs, obviously, Google Slides, PDFs, but also audio files like MP3s.
Audio, too.
Yeah, websites, direct links to YouTube videos, which is neat. Or even just pasting in text you copied from somewhere else.
Wow, that covers a lot of ground, so you're not just limited to standard text documents.
Not at all. And you can bring in quite a bit, apparently.
Yeah.
The video highlighted a limit of up to 50 sources in a single notebook.
50 sources. Imagine dumping like 50 research papers or articles or transcripts all into one spot.
Right. And once they're loaded, the main interaction is this chat. You ask it questions.
Like what?
Oh, summarize the main points in source B, or maybe compare the arguments from these 3 articles on topic X, or even what are the key dates mentioned across all these documents? And it just pulls the answers out.
Pulled directly from your sources, though, not the web.
Precisely. But here's where it gets really clever, I think, and moves beyond just a simple summary.
Okay.
It doesn't just give you the answer, it shows you exactly where that information came from. It cites the specific source down to the relevant passage within that source.
Oh, that's huge. So you can instantly check its work.
Exactly. That source referencing is critical. It's not some black box just spitting out text. You can verify it, click through, see the original context.
Right. Build trust in what it's telling you because you can trace it back.
Absolutely. You can follow its logic right back to the material you provided.
And the video mentioned basic notes too, right? You can save bits of the chat or just type your own thoughts.
Yep, you can save useful chat responses directly as notes or just jot down your own ideas alongside everything else. Standard notes feature, basically.
Got it. So that's the core chat. But then there was this other thing, the notebook guide. What's that about?
Ah, yes, the notebook guide.
Yeah.
This feels like the AI taking a step back, looking at the entire collection of sources you've uploaded.
Like a higher level view.
Kind of, yeah. It synthesizes information across all those sources, potentially up to 50. The video showed it generating things like FAQs based on your content.
Okay.
Or creating study guides, building a table of contents even if the original docs didn't have one, combining different notes thematically, or even suggesting related ideas it spotted across different sources that maybe you hadn't connected.
Wow. So it starts to automate some of that really heavy lifting, the cross-referencing, the initial synthesis, stuff that takes hours manually.
Exactly. Gives you a structured overview, potentially very quickly. Helps you see the forest for the trees, so to speak.
Okay, that's already pretty impressive. But then came the part in the video that really made me sit up. This notebook guide has another feature. It can take all your sources and turn them into an audio conversation.
Yes. This was the part that really stood out, wasn't it? It's kind of amazing. It generates a multi-voice audio track. AI voices discussing the content of your sources.
Like a mini podcast made from your notes?
Pretty much. The video described the voices as, well, quite natural. Apparently, they even interject sometimes, like people actually talking about the material.
That's wild. So imagine you load up, I don't know, a dozen articles for a research project. Instead of just reading them, you hit play and you hear AI voices having a discussion about those articles, pulling out the key points, making connections for you.
Exactly.
For anyone who processes information better by listening, or just for times you can't sit and read, commuting, working out, doing chores, this could be incredibly valuable. It completely changes the game, transforms static documents into something active, something auditory.
The examples they showed in the source video, like taking research notes about fasting, or even, get this, personal journal entries.
Journal entries.
Yeah, and turning them into this conversational audio format. It really showed how versatile it could be. It's a totally new way to engage with information you've already gathered.
And you can control playback speed, download the audio.
Yep, all the standard audio controls seem to be there. Makes it easy to fit into whatever your routine is. It's like having a personalized research podcast created on demand, just for you, based only on your stuff.
Okay, so let's connect this back. Why does this tool, Notebook LM, matter to you, the listener, especially considering the sources you brought for this deep dive?
Well, think about it. Think about the sheer volume of information you probably navigate every single day. For work, for study, even personal projects.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
Totally. And tools like Notebook LM seem designed to tackle that overwhelm head on. They handle the, let's call it the administrative burden, the sorting, the summarizing, finding connections across dozens of files.
Right, the stuff that eats up time but isn't the actual thinking part.
Precisely. It frees you up to spend your time on the higher level stuff. The analysis, the critical thinking, generating your own ideas based on the information.
So it shifts the focus from just managing the information deluge to actually using the information more effectively.
Instead of feeling like you're drowning in sources, you have an assistant, sort of, helping you surface the key insights buried inside them.
You have to wonder, how could this help you specifically? Could it help you tackle that pile of reports before a meeting?
Or maybe accelerate learning something complex by pulling together different viewpoints automatically. Or even, like with the journaling example, offer surprising perspectives on your own writing by finding themes you hadn't consciously noticed.
It opens up possibilities. Now, looking ahead, it's clear this is still experimental, right? The video hinted it might not stay a standalone app forever.
Yeah, that seems likely. It makes a lot of sense, really, to imagine this kind of powerful functionality getting baked directly into places people already work with information.
Like Google Docs. Or maybe a supercharged Google Keep.
Potentially, yeah.
Right.
Or something new entirely. But it points to a bigger shift, I think, in what we even mean by note-taking or information management.
How so?
The tool isn't just a passive storage box anymore. It's becoming an active assistant that actually understands, to some degree, the information you put into it.
Okay.
And if you project that forward, imagine AI assistants that don't just work with documents you manually feed them. Imagine them drawing context from your entire digital footprint, your emails, your chats, maybe your browsing history, your calendar, to give you incredibly personalized insights and support throughout your day.
An AI that really gets your whole information landscape. Wow.
Yep.
That's a big concept. And tools like Notebook LM feel like a very early but significant step down that road.
Definitely feels like a glimpse of what might be coming.
Okay, so to sort of wrap things up for today, Notebook LM, based on this video deep dive, is this potent experimental tool from Google. It lets you chat directly with your source materials.
Offers really smart features like that automatic source referencing and cross-document synthesis through the Notebook Guide.
But the real jaw-dropper, the really unique thing, is that ability to transform all your sources into a dynamic, conversational audio experience, like your own personal podcast.
It's a fascinating development.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to ponder, building on that future idea we just touched on. If your personal information assistant could draw insights from absolutely everything, all your digital content, documents, emails, the works, what does that really mean? How would that change how you process ideas, how you make decisions? How might it even change how you see yourself reflected in all that data? What are the incredible potential upsides? And what are the maybe slightly unsettling challenges of having an AI companion that knows your information world possibly better than you do?
Lots to think about there. Really interesting space to watch. Ready to jump into something that feels less like just another app and maybe more like a peek into the future of how we actually learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're thinking about your current note-taking tool, whatever it is, just maybe picture something completely different for a moment.
Right. We're diving into Google's Notebook LM today.
Notebook LM, it's been around since July 2023, but the sources we looked at are really clear. This is not Google Keep.
No, definitely not. It's very much flagged as experimental, research project for now web only. But the idea behind it, the core concept, that's what's really interesting.
It really is. It's designed to let you have a conversation, essentially, with your own stuff, your sources.
Yeah, your articles, documents, notes you've written, research maybe. You put them in, and then you can, talk to them, extract insights.
Exactly. It's about getting understanding from your materials, not just storing them somewhere, moving beyond simple storage.
So, okay, our mission for this deep dive. Let's unpack what Notebook LM actually does. How does it work under the hood? And we need to talk about some of the examples from the sources because, frankly, some are pretty surprising.
Oh, yeah.
And then zoom out a bit. How could something like this change how you, our listener, might engage with information, build up your knowledge?
So the foundation, really, it's all about your source material. You gather up what you want to work with.
Right.
And you can upload quite a bit, the sources mentioned, up to 50 documents in what they call a single notebook.
50 sources is a lot. And the formats.
Pretty flexible, actually. PDFs, Google Docs are in there. You can just paste text. But also website links, even YouTube videos, apparently. And they just sort of appear in a panel next to your main workspace.
Okay, so let's say you've got your digital stack loaded up. What's the next step? What do you do?
Well, the main interaction feels a lot like chatting, like using a chatbot.
But you're chatting with your documents, right? Not the whole internet.
Exactly. You ask Notebook LM questions about the specific material you uploaded.
And here's the bit that the sources really emphasize, the crucial part.
Yeah, it doesn't hallucinate, or at least it's designed not to. When it gives you an answer, it shows its work.
It gives citations, references back to the exact spot in your original documents.
Little numbered links, usually, which is incredibly helpful, as the sources point out.
That's got to be key, right?
Yeah.
For trust. You can instantly check, okay, where did you get that from? You see the source.
Right. It's not just a black box spitting out text. It's like a super smart index and summarizer rolled into one.
And while you're having this chat, asking questions, getting these sourced answers, if it pulls out a really good point, or maybe summarizes something neatly,
you can save it directly. There's a notes section within the notebook. You just click a button and capture that specific bit from the chat.
so the useful parts of the conversation don't just vanish. You build up your own notes from the interaction.
Exactly. And kind of tying all this together is something they call the notebook guide.
The guide. Like a dashboard for your project.
Sort of, yeah. Think of it like the homepage for that specific collection of sources you've uploaded. It gives you an overview, like a summary of all the documents together.
Okay, that high-level summary alone sounds useful if you've dumped in, say, 20 papers.
Definitely. But you can also use the guide to generate other things from your sources. The sources mention creating things like a list of frequently asked questions based on the material.
Oh, interesting.
Or even a study guide. So it's actively helping you structure and reframe the information in different ways.
Okay, standard features seem useful. Source-grounded chat, summaries. But then there's this other feature the sources mentioned. The one they called, well, pretty amazing.
Ah, yes, the audio overview. This is where things get, as you said, a bit wild.
How does it work?
You select some or all of your sources. You tell it to, I think the phrase was load conversation.
Okay.
And it takes your documents, your text, and turns it into a simulated dialogue, like a little podcast episode almost.
Wait, what? It creates a conversation about your notes with AI voices.
Yeah, AI voices discussing the material you uploaded.
That sounds bizarre, but the sources seem genuinely impressed.
They did. They gave a couple of examples that really illustrate it. One was someone uploaded personal journal entries.
Okay. About what?
Detailing all the anxiety and thoughts around making a big career change. So very personal stuff.
Right.
And Notebook LM generated this conversation between two AI voices discussing those journal entries. The source described it as getting this retrospective look at their own feelings, like listening to others explore your past anxieties.
Wow. Okay, that's not just summarizing facts, that's processing subjective experience almost.
It seems like it, yeah. The other example was maybe more straightforward, uploading articles about intermittent fasting.
And it generated a discussion about fasting.
Yes, and the source specifically noted how surprisingly natural the dialogue felt, including like little interjections and conversational turns you'd expect from real people chatting.
Huh. So it's a completely different way to engage with information, isn't it?
Totally. If you're an auditory learner, maybe, or if you're just trying to absorb something dense or maybe a bit dry, hearing it discussed could make a real difference.
So that brings up the question, who's this actually for? Who benefits most?
Well, the obvious candidates mentioned are, students drowning in research papers.
Right. Research is synthesizing literature. Makes sense.
But that journaling example, it suggests it could be useful for anyone trying to make sense of a collection of documents. Could be personal stuff, could be work notes, project plans.
Anything where you have a bunch of text you need to understand better.
Yeah. It feels like a potential shortcut. Not necessarily to skip the work, but a shortcut to surfacing the key insights or connections within a large volume of material.
So you spend less time just reading page after page and more time thinking about what it means.
That seems to be the idea. Spend your energy on the higher level analysis.
And thinking longer term. What's the future here? The sources had thoughts on that too, right? Does Notebook LM stay this standalone experiment?
Probably not, is the suggestion. It seems more likely that this kind of capability, the source-aware intelligence, gets woven into other Google products.
Like inside Google Docs itself. Or maybe a superpowered Google Keep down the line.
Could be. That integration idea points to this broader vision the sources were talking about for note-taking tools in general. That they're moving way beyond just being digital filing cabinets. They're evolving into intelligent assistants. Tools that actively help you process and understand information, not just store it.
Helping you connect the dots, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. And maybe even pulling in context from, your emails, your calendar, other documents you've worked on to give you richer insights based on your own digital life.
That really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From the busy work of taking notes and organizing files
Right.
towards the actual quality of thinking and understanding that you can achieve with the information you've gathered.
Exactly. It's less about the container, more about what you can build with the contents.
So that leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on, maybe. Yeah. If all your collected knowledge, articles, notes, research, maybe even your own reflections, if that could be instantly summarized, questioned, debated, even discussed with you by an AI, how might that fundamentally change your own personal learning process? Or even just how you make decisions based on the information you have?
It's a fascinating possibility to consider, a completely different relationship with our own information. Okay, let's dive in. We all know that feeling, right? Just drowning in information, articles, notes, emails. It's a lot.
It really is. It just keeps piling up.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a tool that's specifically built to help you, wrestle with that pile, to help you make sense of all the stuff you need to process.
And we're basing this on a really interesting YouTube video review we watched. It takes a close look at this pretty new application from Google.
Right. And now you hear Google and Notes, you probably think Google Keep. This isn't that.
No, completely different thing. It's called Notebook LM.
So our mission today, figure out what this thing actually is, how it works with all your different sources, your documents, your notes, and maybe explore why this approach could be, a sign of a bigger shift in how we handle information.
Sounds like a plan.
So first things first, what exactly is Notebook LM?
Okay, so the review positions it as Google's experimental note-taking app. It actually kicked off as a research project. That was back in July 2023.
So pretty recent.
Right.
And keyword, experimental.
Definitely experimental. And important to know, right now, it's web only. You access it through your browser.
Gotcha. And its main idea, what was it built for?
The core concept, initially anyway, was to let you take a bunch of your own sources, documents, files, whatever, and basically interact with them through a chat.
Like having a conversation with your documents.
Yeah, kind of. Like you're prompting an AI, but the AI is only looking at your specific information, not the whole internet.
Okay, so it's grounded in the material you provide.
Yeah.
That's a big difference from just asking a general chatbot something.
Exactly. It uses that large language model tech, but confines it strictly to your context. And the review did mention it's already, changed quite a bit since it first came out.
Interesting. So this idea of chatting with your sources, how does that practically work, and what kind of sources are we talking about?
Well, the main interface looks a lot like a chat window. Makes sense, right? You upload your sources first, and you can just start typing questions, asking about what's in those documents you uploaded.
What can you upload? Is it just like text files, PDFs?
No, that was something the review really highlighted its flexibility. You can pull in Google Docs, slides, obviously PDFs, but also audio files like MP3s. You can point it at website content, YouTube videos even, or just copy and paste text straight in.
Wait, audio and YouTube videos? You can feed it a video transcript or an audio file and ask questions about that?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really broadens the scope of what you can use as a source.
Definitely. And how much can you actually load in? Is there a limit?
The review mentioned you can put up to 50 sources into a single notebook.
50?
50. Yeah, the reviewer called that pretty impressive, and honestly, I agree. Think about having 50 different research papers or meeting notes or transcripts all in one place that you can talk to.
Yeah, 50 sources is. That's substantial. Okay, so they're uploaded, then you just type questions?
You can do that, or it also gives you some pre-made prompts, things to get you started, like asking for summaries or pulling out key topics. But the really crucial thing, and the review stressed this, is that when it answers, it tells you where it got the information from.
Citation.
Exactly. It'll show you which source, or maybe multiple sources it used. You'll see like a little number, maybe #5, and often you can click, and it takes you right to the relevant bit in the original document.
Okay, that's huge. So it's not just making things up, it's showing its work based only on the stuff you gave it.
Precisely. The reviewer had this example. They loaded several documents about how light bulbs were invented. And Notebook LM could pull bits from different documents to answer a specific question about the invention process.
That makes sense, connecting the dots across your material.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say you're having this chat, and it gives you a really useful answer or insight. What then? just copy-paste it somewhere else?
No, you can actually save those useful chat responses directly within Notebook LM. They become notes.
Okay, saved notes.
Yes. And that's where another layer comes in, according to the review. Once you have these notes saved, you can select them one note or a bunch of them.
And do what with them?
Well, several things. You can chat about the notes themselves to dig deeper, or you could select, say, 5 notes on a related topic and ask Notebook LM to create a study guide just from those specific insights.
Oh, interesting. So generating new material from the notes.
Right, or create an outline, combine different notes together, ask for a summary of just the selected notes. It can even suggest related ideas based on what's in those notes you saved.
Wow. Okay. So it's moving beyond just question and answer with the source docs into helping you synthesize and build on the key takeaways.
That's exactly how it felt from the review, yeah. Less like storage, more like an active processing partner.
Okay, so we have the chat, we have the saved notes you can work with. The review also talked about something called the Notebook Guide. What's that about?
Right, the Notebook Guide. Think of it as like a main dashboard or an overview page for all the sources you've put into one notebook.
A summary of everything.
Yeah. It automatically generates a summary based on the entire collection of documents in that notebook.
Okay, that sounds useful for getting the big picture quickly.
Definitely. And from that big picture summary, it can generate other useful things for you. Like, it can create an FAQ based on all the sources combined.
Oh, nice.
Or a study guide covering everything. Or even a table of contents for your whole source collection.
A table of contents generated from 50 different documents. That could be really helpful for just navigating.
For sure. And the review also mentioned it suggests questions for you to ask based on scanning everything. It even gave this example where it combined info from like a formal Harvard paper and a YouTube video transcript about fasting. And suggested a relevant question that linked ideas from both those very different sources, showing it can connect things across different types of material.
That's pretty smart. Connecting dots you might not have seen yourself. Okay, chat notes guide. But the feature that seemed to really blow the reviewer away, and honestly it sounds pretty unique, was this audio overview. Did I get that right? It turns your stuff into a podcast.
Yeah, you got it right. And it does sound kind of wild, doesn't it? It's a newer feature, apparently.
So what does it do?
It basically takes all the information from your sources in the notebook, and it generates an audio discussion about it, using AI voices.
AI voices having a chat about my research papers.
Kind of, yeah. The reviewer seemed really impressed with the quality. Said the AI voices sounded quite natural, even mentioning how they'd sort of interject like people do in a real conversation. So it pulls everything together and creates this audio dialogue summarizing or discussing the key points. The review did note it can take a little while to generate, especially if you have a lot of sources, but the output was striking.
The reviewer tried a specific test with it, didn't they? Something about journal entries.
They did. It was pretty clever. They created these fake fictional journal entries, written as if by someone feeling anxious about changing jobs. They uploaded only those journal entries. And then they used the audio overview feature. Notebook LM generated an audio conversation, sort of a retrospective look back at the feelings expressed in those entries.
Wait, so the AI voices weren't just reading the entries aloud, they were discussing the content of the entry.
Exactly. Discussing the themes, the feelings, the anxieties described in the text. The reviewer used the phrase, "pretty insane," to describe how well it created this dialogue about how the fictional person was feeling based only on those written words.
Wow. That's a step beyond just summarization.
It really is. And you can see the potential, right? For people who prefer listening or maybe for reviewing complex info while you're commuting or doing chores, it's a totally different way to engage with your material, especially when you have lots of it.
Absolutely. So pulling this all together then, who does the review suggest would really benefit from a tool like this? And what's the bigger implication here?
Well, the obvious groups are students, researchers, anyone who deals with a ton of reading material, right?
Makes sense.
But maybe also people in fields like marketing or business analysis, needing to pull insights from lots of reports or customer feedback, that kind of thing.
And the review hinted this wasn't just another app, but maybe part of a bigger change.
Yeah, they talked about note-taking, maybe heading for a big shift. The idea being that a lot of the manual work, what they call productivity administration.
Like filing, organizing, tagging.
Exactly, all that maintenance stuff. The idea is that tools like this could potentially automate or even wipe out a lot of that administrative burden.
So you can focus more on the actual thinking?
That's the argument. Spend your energy on the quality of the insights, the connections, the ideas themselves, not just managing the notes.
Okay, that's an appealing thought. And thinking longer term, where could this technology go?
Well, Notebook LM is standalone right now and experimental, but the reviewer speculated, and it seems plausible, that this kind of AI capability could eventually be woven into other tools we already use.
Like built into Google Docs or something.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Google Keep. It might become less of a separate destination and more like an intelligent assistant within your existing workflow.
An assistant that understands your information.
Right. And the vision gets even bigger. Imagine an assistant that could connect dots, not just within documents, but across your emails, your calendar, maybe even your personal notes, synthesizing insights from different parts of your digital life.
An AI assistant powered by your personal knowledge graph, essentially. That's a future-forward idea.
Definitely heading in that direction, it seems.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive here, Notebook LM, it's Google's experimental shot at changing how you interact with your own information pile. Chatting with docs, saving insights, getting overviews, even listening to AI-generated discussions about your material.
It really feels targeted at that modern problem of just having too much information, offering smarter ways to actually process and use it rather than just storing it.
It really does. Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to mull over. If these kinds of note-taking tools evolve into powerful AI assistants that can genuinely synthesize knowledge across your entire information stream, documents, messages, everything, how might that fundamentally change the way you learn, the way you remember, and maybe even the way you make decisions day to day? Today we're digging into some pretty serious information. Brought forward by an agent, we've got allegations against a well-known figure, but also hints of something much broader, maybe a whole system.
Right. And the source material, it's interesting. We have statements from people who, well, they were too afraid to actually testify in court.
Yeah, plus this recorded phone call that seems quite significant. So our goal here is really to try and understand what these core allegations are and, what they might imply.
And what hits you right away is that contrast, isn't it? You have these really personal stories, alleged harm to individuals, and then suddenly this idea of like widespread influence.
Definitely. It makes you wonder how those two connect.
Exactly, how they might feed into each other.
So let's start with those statements, the ones from people who weren't in court. The agent mentioned, 26 individuals?
26, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reasons cited were fear, threats, maybe NDAs, non-disclosure agreements.
That number alone, 26, it makes you pause. And the accounts themselves. Well, one was a former choreographer. She alleged being drugged, assaulted at a party.
A very serious allegation.
And then there was a young male model. He described this party that sounded, strange. Silent, cameras everywhere, rules about not talking.
It sounds incredibly controlled, almost unsettling, not like a party atmosphere at all. It hints at a kind of environment where people maybe didn't feel free.
You start seeing a potential pattern there, maybe? Control, intimidation?
Possibly. Even these brief descriptions, they sort of echo each other and suggesting something wasn't right, something coercive perhaps.
And then, maybe the most impactful one came from someone who was just 17 when they apparently met this figure.
Oh, right. That one was tough to read.
Yeah. They said, I thought I was getting a mentor. It was never that. And then he told me if I ever spoke out, my family would suffer.
Wow. That's incredibly chilling. The vulnerability there, and then that direct threat.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about why someone might be too scared to come forward.
Absolutely. And again, the fact that there were apparently 26 such stories, people feeling unable to speak in court, it suggests, a powerful silencing effect, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you question the mechanisms behind that silence.
Yeah.
You mentioned NDAs earlier.
Right.
Non-disclosure agreements. These are legal tools, basically contracts to keep quiet. If they were used here, it suggests a calculated effort to, manage information, keep these stories contained, maybe alongside other pressures.
Seems plausible. Okay, so then we move to this recorded phone call. The agent read this out, apparently on the final day of proceedings.
Yes, that's the context given. A call supposedly from 2015.
And the alleged quote is pretty blunt. I brought the money. I brought the artists. We flipped 5 precincts. If I go down, so do some of you.
Yeah. That's quite a statement. The agent's take was that this wasn't about music, not about the entertainment business.
No, their interpretation pointed towards politics. Campaign money, maybe influencing elections. And that phrase, flipped 5 precincts, is very specific.
Yeah, it really is. It suggests, potentially, a deliberate effort to impact political outcomes on a local level. If true, that's a whole different dimension to this.
And that's apparently when the perspective in the court shifted. according to the agent's account anyway.
Right. It suddenly wasn't just about one person's alleged actions anymore. It opened up the possibility of a hidden system.
A system of influence, maybe control, that had been operating under the radar for years.
And if you connect that back to the individuals who were too afraid to speak,
Yeah.
well, you have to wonder, could the power derived from that kind of alleged political influence, that kind of network, be part of why people felt so intimidated? Could it be used to ensure silence?
That's a disturbing thought. So the main takeaway from looking at this source material seems to be this potential interplay between alleged personal harm and a much larger system.
Definitely. A significant power dynamic is suggested, potentially reaching into areas well beyond entertainment, maybe even politics.
It leaves you with some big questions, doesn't it? Yeah.
It really does. Like, what does it mean for society if fear and alleged threats can silence so many voices?
Yeah.
How can a system like that, if it exists, operate undetected for so long?
And I suppose the really provocative question, if these suggestions of political involvement, of flipping precincts have any truth to them, what does that say about the democratic process itself? Something to really mull over. Okay, so let's dive into this. The whole scene starts in this courtroom, right? There's this warning about intense content.
Yeah, for educational and entertainment use only, which already sets a tone.
Exactly. And then, completely unexpected, this guy walks in, Navy suit, looks like a witness, but he's got a federal badge hidden.
Former FBI agent Mark Halperin. The room apparently just went silent.
And he gets up there, opens his briefcase, and basically says, I've been tracking Combs for over 20 years. We can finally talk about it.
Wow. You can imagine the tension. Sort of changes the whole dynamic instantly.
Totally. And his opening point is huge. Combs wasn't protected by just lawyers, but by serving powerful people.
Which leads straight into the FBI history. They apparently tried investigating way back, late 90s.
Yeah, finding things like, suspicious money trails, parties maybe linked to trafficking, shell companies overseas.
Standard signs of something bigger, potentially.
Yeah.
But the key thing Halperin stressed was who blocked them.
Right. Not local cops getting leaned on. This was, according to him, interference coming from Washington, D.C.
He gave that 2001 example, didn't he? With the Bad Boy Records affiliate in Europe?
He did. Said there was solid evidence of illegal finance stuff, but when they went for warrants, denied.
And that's when they apparently realized, uh-oh, this isn't just celebrity poll. This feels like federal-level interference.
Then it gets even more, specific. Halperin brings up connections to President Barack Obama.
Okay, that's a massive... What was the basis?
He showed photos. A 2005 fundraiser, sure, but also a 2007 closed-door event. Combs was there, allegedly under a fake name.
A fake name. Why?
Well, Halperin claimed these weren't just meet and greets. He alleged they were secret meetings, possibly with Democratic Party figures, where Combs supposedly traded intelligence for immunity.
Intelligence? What kind? That sounds unusual.
He didn't specify the type, but the implication was that this relationship kept Combs safe for years, as long as he was, useful.
Which kind of ties into that timeline they presented. All those failed investigations between 99 and 2013.
Exactly. Trafficking links, wire fraud, assault allegations.
Every time, something weird happened.
Witnesses disappearing, cases getting stalled, files vanishing, agents suddenly reassigned. It's quite a list.
And pretty blatant if true, like the 2009 attempt to get a wiretap on Combs' phone. Denied.
Just denied. Or was there more?
They later found out a call was made, apparently from a legal office with links to the White House.
Whoa. Okay, pause there. Does that mean the president himself?
Halperin was careful. He clarified, we're not accusing President Obama directly. But the suggestion was someone in his circle provided protection. The courtroom was stunned, apparently.
I bet. So we have alleged political protection, blocked investigations. What else?
Surveillance. Halperin revealed Combs had hidden cameras in his homes, especially L.A., not just security cams.
Hidden how? And recording what?
Recording private areas, bedrooms, pools, studios, without consent, allegedly, which is creepy on its own.
Definitely. And then there was that fire.
Right, 2016. The FBI was supposedly about to seize hard drives from a specific house, and boom, arson, confirmed arson. But one drive survived.
Yeah, found in a safe deposit box in Puerto Rico. And the alleged contents? Videos?
Videos of what? Or who?
Celebrities, business people, political figures. In compromising situations, Halperin claimed Combs used them as blackmail. Insurance, he supposedly called it.
That's a whole other level, blackmail material on powerful people.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? And it keeps going. 2015, the FBI tracks Combs' trips. Haiti, Colombia, private Caribbean islands.
Not just vacations, I'm guessing. According to foreign intelligence cited by Habrin, no. Meetings with alleged drug cartel associates, financiers, and parties.
Parties involving underage girls reportedly brought from Brazil, Eastern Europe, sometimes told it was a music audition. The agent linked it to organized crime, human trafficking.
This is incredibly dark stuff, just piling up.
And then a twist. A declassified CIA memo from 2012.
CIA. How do they fit in?
The memo apparently identified Combs as a high-value cultural influencer, someone with access to powerful networks, politics, business, media.
So the CIA was using him.
The memo suggested they didn't officially recruit him, but they, let's say, benefited from info flowing from his connections and parties. The implication being he was allowed to operate because he was useful to intelligence circles.
A cultural influencer, moonlighting as an intelligence asset, while allegedly running criminal operations. That's wild.
It really is. Then you add the personal stories, statements from 26 unnamed people.
What kind of allegations?
A former choreographer, a young male model, someone who met him at 17. Stories of drugging, assault, those weird parties with cameras everywhere, and threats if they spoke out.
It brings it back to the human impact, the alleged victims.
Definitely. And finally, there was this recorded phone call from 2015, allegedly Combs.
What did it say?
Something like, I brought the money, I brought the artists, we flipped 5 precincts. If I go down, so do some of you.
Flipped 5 precincts. What does that even mean in this context?
The agent interpreted it as hinting at political meddling, maybe election influence, suggesting this whole network wasn't just about parties and music, but potentially reached into actual political power structures.
So, summing this all up, the testimony paints a picture of, well, not just a celebrity dodging trouble, but potentially a decades-long system.
Yeah, a system of influence and control, allegedly reaching into high-level politics, maybe even intelligence agencies. Protected status in exchange for something.
It really forces you to think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If this kind of system can exist around one figure, what does that say about power and accountability more broadly?
Exactly. What other networks like this might be operating completely unseen? It's a pretty provocative thought to leave our listeners with. Today, we're going straight into the evidence, the allegations against Diddy,
Right. We're looking closely at this secret archive that's come up and some pretty powerful witness statements.
Yeah, the goal here is really to unpack the core information, get past the headlines, and, well, figure out what it might all mean for you listening.
And we're starting with what seems like, honestly, the most explosive piece. This hidden archive they're calling Project Ghost Room.
Right, Project Ghost Room.
Yeah.
So picture this. A raid back in 2022. They find this climate-controlled vault.
Hidden inside what looked like just a regular business, apparently.
Exactly. And inside, it wasn't empty. We're talking hard drives, photos, audio files, even handwritten notes.
And the labels on these things, that's what really catches your eye. Phrases like leverage.
Leverage, yeah. And hush. Even verify use. Things like that.
It suggests real intent, and the climate control thing. They clearly wanted to preserve this stuff long term.
It definitely paints a picture. The whole alleged purpose of this Project Ghost Room sounds, well, pretty sinister, like a detailed blackmail system.
That's the allegation, that this archive was a tool used to control artists, maybe silence reporters digging too deep.
And even potentially get favors from political figures.
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
Which leads us straight into the witness statements.
Okay, yeah. These are confidential statements, right, from people who didn't testify openly.
Exactly. 26 individuals. And you can understand why they might be hesitant. Fear, NDAs binding them, even alleged threats.
Let's touch on a couple. There's a former choreographer, female, who said she was drugged at a party and assaulted.
Yes, and crucially, she also claimed her agency just dropped her afterwards.
Wow. That's just, serious consequences.
Absolutely. Then you have a young male model flown to Miami thinking it's for his career.
Yeah.
He ends up at this really weird silent party, cameras everywhere, strict rules, like no talking allowed. It sounds controlling, intimidating.
Definitely creepy. And wasn't there one that was particularly disturbing, someone very young?
Yeah, that one hit hard.
Yeah.
Someone who was only 17 when they met Diddy, they thought he was going to help their career.
But instead,
they reported being threatened. A direct quote was something like, "He told me if I ever spoke out, my family would pay the price."
God, that's chilling. Threatening family.
It really is. And even though these people weren't in court, you put these stories together.
You start to see a potential pattern, right? Coercion, control, using power to keep people quiet.
Precisely. It builds this narrative.
Okay, so there's the archive, the witness accounts. But there was one more major piece, wasn't there? A phone call.
Right. The final day of presenting evidence, they brought out a transcript. A phone call, allegedly from 2015.
And the key part.
The quote attributed to Diddy is, well, it's something else. I brought in the dollars, I brought in the artists, we flipped 5 precincts blue.
Whoa, okay, flipping precincts, that sounds political.
That's exactly how the agent presenting it framed it. And then the rest of the quote. If I go down, some of y'all go down too.
So the interpretation wasn't just about music or parties anymore.
Not at all. The agent suggested this pointed towards campaign donations, using celebrity influence for political gain, maybe even affecting local elections.
Election tampering, that's a huge leap from music industry drama.
It is. The agent basically laid it out. This was potentially about buying power, silencing threats, and actively shaping politics, using money, fear, and maybe that whole Project Ghost Room archive as leverage.
So it connects back. The archive, the fear, the potential political angle.
It all seems potentially linked, yeah. It really shifted to perspective in that courtroom, apparently. From celebrity scandal to something bigger, more systemic.
Okay, so let's recap the core evidence we've discussed. You've got Project Ghost Room, this alleged blackmail library.
The confidential witness statements detailing really disturbing claims, drugging, intimidation, threats against family.
And finally, that phone call transcript, hinting this influence might stretch way beyond entertainment, right into politics.
It definitely makes you think.